So welcome everyone to WeREndurance peer-to-peer webinar series. And today Steve is going to talk about trail running. And without further ado, Steve, it's all yours.
Okay. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Steve Girardi. I'm a WRE member. And I want to thank Hillary for inviting all of us to share some things peer-to-peer. I think it's very useful, very practical way. We're making the most out of Zoom, as it should work for everyone. And it also gives us an opportunity to meet people from around the country as well. So again, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about trail running, a little bit about my background first, if you like. I'm a certified level 1 running coach, and I've done some coaching as parts of other groups. And but beyond that, I'm not much different than the rest of you. I'm just a running guy and multi-sport enthusiast like all of you. And I'm enjoying really, I think, the best part of our lives, where we're really able to capture everything we learned, all the mistakes we made over the course of our youth, and kind of like tweaking things to really maximize our lives, particularly given where we are in the world. So these are really good groups, and I'm happy to be part of it. So I'm just looking at some of my notes. So here's the thing. So the basic question is, why consider trail running? Well, when I talk to people about trail running, the number one thing that I tell them is that it is an obvious, change and departure from what is probably your normal running routine. I think many runners in particular they have a difficult time disconnecting from their regular running routines. And sometimes we don't open up our minds and our bodies to things other than our regular running routines on the same running paths, doing the same miles, day after day after day. What I find is that when people try out running on trails, they realize that they've opened themselves up to an entirely different world and a really enjoyable and positive experience. Physically and mentally, I find that it is just a wonderful change of pace from the regular road running that most of us tend to do. You're really forced to change the way you run. Okay, you can't run at the same pace, using the same gait that you would running on streets or on roads or on tracks. And for some people, that's a little off-putting at first. Okay, because many of us are tied to our watches, and we have an idea about pacing, and it's tied into our training programs. And for many of us to suddenly find themselves with the sensation that they're almost running in quicksand, they kind of freak out a little bit sometimes. What I encourage people to do is to embrace it, embrace the fact that you're running on the trail is by nature going to be different. But the upside is that if you're doing this more than periodically, you find that you're also using different muscles, using them in different ways, and you're probably enhancing your training, whether or not you realize it, because you're giving some of your other muscles a rest. Another upside that people discover, usually by accident, is that you also get a little respite from the elements. I find that running on trails is warmer in winter and cooler in summer. In summer, it's pretty easy to see. Okay, you usually have a canopy of trees somewhere or other, so you have shelter from the sun, and tends to be cooler because really you're running on the earth. The earth is is breathing. The ground is generally cooler, so it's a great opportunity to get away from the scorching heat of your summer runs, and just relax and enjoy yourself in nature. In winter, what people don't realize is that it's almost always warmer as well. Because even if you're in an area where you don't have where you lost all your leaves, you'll find that you still get a windbreak from just the stand of trees all around you, depending on where you're running. And because of the undulating levels of different places, you'll find yourself going through little valleys of things. You'll find that you're sheltered from the wind, which is personally, my worst enemy. I hate the wind more than anything. And I'll find that, once you step into the trees on most of the trails, you'll find that you get a break from the wind as well. So there are some nice upsides to that seasonally. Let me give you a little background story on me. So excuse me if I'm looking at my notes. So how I came to get close to running on trails was that, as a boy, I had this natural interest in cross-country races. I must have seen or heard of the old-fashioned point-to-point cross-country races in England and Ireland, where racers would run over hill and dale, fording over streams and jumping over logs on their way to wherever the race end was, and it just captured my imagination. I always thought it was kind of interesting. Unfortunately, I grew up in Brooklyn, and we didn't have much in the way of trees. I understand that a tree grew in Brooklyn, but it didn't grow on my street. But I always knew that I was just always drawn to distance running. As a matter of fact, we played all the usual street games, in Brooklyn, and we raced, we did dashes and things like that. But I always liked challenging friends to what I would call a cross country race, which would be one lap around the block, and we would have fun with it. We would start in front of somebody's stoop, okay, and we'd run in opposite directions. Okay, and we'd see who got back to the stoop, first, and halfway around the block, we'd high five the guy, going to see wherever he was. And then we wait till we got around the corner, and then we'd see how close we were, and then we'd sprint, and that was the big cross country race. Nobody wanted to do it because they thought it was just too far, but that was always the thing that I enjoyed most. So it started just organically when I was a kid. Fast forward a bit, when we moved with my family to Long Island, I was a little disappointed. I'm a city kid at heart. I just have the city in my bones. And when I found myself, for those of you who are not from New York, when I found myself further out on Long Island, I felt literally like lost. And so to escape just kind of like the boredom, I just started back into running, and right across from where we lived was a section of woods that led into trails. And all of a sudden, I just felt like I found myself again. And just by chance, I started running on these trails, and I would see these little blazes on the trees periodically. And over time, I discovered that this was part of the original Long Island Greenbelt Trail. And that opened up an entirely different world for me, because I was an enthusiastic hiker after that. I joined the Greenbelt Trail, and basically, I was looking for trails wherever I could after that. Interestingly, I ran most of my training runs for my first 2 marathons on those same running trails in the woods. I would say probably 75, 80% of all of my miles for my first 2 marathons were all on the trails, all in the woods. And I had this sense initially that it was going to hurt me. It was going to affect my speed for the race, but it did none of that. I think looking back that it probably enhanced my ability to run. So that's how I started, getting involved in that. So getting back to the present, when it comes to running on trails, for those of you, again, for the benefit of those of you who don't live in the New York area, what I liked about trail running, particularly on Long Island, is that here we are effectively at the top of the food chain in terms of non-human predators, shall we say. We have no bears, no mountain lions, no moose, no elk, no poisonous snakes, venomous snakes, no scorpions, nothing like that. Although I am told that there have been sightings, oddly enough, of coyotes, which is relatively new for Long Island. I'm told that it's verified that there are a couple of families of coyotes established somewhere on the island. They're said to be non-threatening, very skittish. If you're making a little noise, they're generally going to run away. But that's kind of new. But beyond that, other than creeps, human creeps that you could encounter everywhere, the woods here are really safe to run in. And with the preponderance of explosion of populations of deer, almost everywhere you go on Long Island, you run into some deer, and they're getting to be, very brazen, and because they're accustomed to getting fed now. So you'll see them, marching across the trails in front of you with increasing frequency. But other than that, I think you find that the greatest threat to people running on the trails boils down to two things, as I found. One of them is poison ivy, which I've found to my detriment several times in very serious ways. And also ticks, particularly the deer tick that causes Lyme disease. I've avoided that, fortunately, but ticks are everywhere and probably the same elsewhere in the country. So there are cautions that you should consider when you're out on trails with regard to those things. The simplest thing to do when you're running on trails to avoid issues with that is just stay on the trail. Okay, stay out of the brush, and you're generally going to be fine. Check yourself for ticks. When you're done after that, then you'll probably be okay. I have a little trick here for ticks. Okay, I found this recently. It's a little thing. You can see this thing here. It's called Tick Patrol. It's a little tool that helps you kind of like remove ticks from your body should you find them. It's still in the package. I haven't gotten to use it yet, but my wife's very excited that we have this because she knows she's going to be dragging them off me sooner or later. Before I get into equipment and other considerations, anybody have any questions so far? No? Okay. So when it comes to running on trails, for the most part, again, and I apologize for those who live elsewhere, but here on Long Island, you don't need much in the way of footwear. You can wear your regular running shoes just about anywhere. It's mostly sandy soil that drains well for the most part. So you shouldn't have to spend money necessarily just to go out and enjoy yourself on a trail somewhere. I do have a couple of examples of trail shoes that I use, and I'm happy to show you here. I'm a big fan of Hoka. I wear them almost exclusively. This is one of their trail shoes. It's called the Speed Goat. It's waterproof, and this is kind of a mid-high top kind of version, which I really enjoy, and I use it a lot in the winter, even when I'm out just walking the dog in snow like we've had, recently. It has a little bit of a tread on it, nothing really severe. I avoid running on the streets with them because it's a little clunky. But if anyone here golfs, the tread here kind of resembles more of like what a modern golf shoe is. Just a little bit of a grip on the bottom, but nothing really severe. These are really great. They keep me dry in winter, and I enjoy them a lot. For racing on trails, I tend to go to this other version of Hoka's Speed Goat. It's a low top version, but again, it has the same kind of moderate grippy stuff on the bottom. Also has some waterproof or water repellent properties to it. And I enjoy these a lot. So I've made really good use out of these. I cleaned them up just for the show because they were kind of messy looking. But this is as far as you really ever need to go, even if you get into it a little bit more. important thing I like to talk about with regard to the trails, which you should always consider, is safety. Okay, we've all been out there, and we know that our safety can be compromised anytime, anywhere, on the streets, elsewhere. Running on the trails obviously poses its own potential for threats, and not necessarily from people, although that's always there, but also just, generally. I wouldn't venture out on most runs into the trails ever without, having some basics, with me. Stuff you're probably carrying now: ID, phone, credit card, cash, and a water bottle. I think you should be drinking water, every month of the year. If you're going to venture out for longer stretches on the trail, sunscreen, insect repellent, it's a good idea. And then if you really, go a little deeper, you might consider something like a little bit of a larger pack that you might carry, like a waist pack or something like that. Again, thinking about the trail run as its own entity, don't compare it with doing like a timed 10-mile run that you're thinking of for your marathon training, so to speak. Depart from that for the day. I use a theory for all of my training, which I adhere to, which basically boils down to this: train heavy and race light, which means that for most of my training, I'll wear generally a heavier shoe that I might use on race day, and I might carry more with me during my training runs, or wear more on training runs than I would on race day. I don't find that it's really detrimental in any way, and over the course of time, usually I feel like having the extra stuff with me is a benefit. I'm going to share with you a few things that I tend to take out almost all the time, but definitely on trails. So you guys probably have all variations of these things. This is my basic go-to waist pack. It fits, my phone on here. And, you can put a credit card and a couple of things in there. This is what I would use just for like a couple of miles around the neighborhood. I'm not going very far. Pretty basic. Okay. When I step up, I encourage everyone the same way. When you go out, I have this other waist pack, which includes a water bottle. Okay. This I wear around me. This goes against the small of your back. And there's enough room. I actually have to kind of upgrade because I can barely squeeze my phone into here. But if you shop around, you'll find no shortage of things that you can do. But here, for the purposes of going on the trail, this would be the least that I would bring. Okay, I have a water bottle. I have, some wipes, some sunscreen. And that's for maybe a couple of miles around a trail that's close to home that I'm familiar with. The Big Daddy that I've used for longer trails, for instance, last year I did a one-day run of the Long Island Greenbelt Trail here in Suffolk County. So it's roughly 34 miles in distance. I was out from dawn till whenever. So I used a pack that you guys are probably familiar with here. But I also, for longer runs, I use this thing as almost like a bat belt. Okay, has all your little tools on it. Here, these water bottles are 8 ounces each, so you can carry a quart with you on the way out. Frequently at the start of the day, I might take a regular water bottle and just carry that for the first few miles, which I really don't like to do, but I would carry that until I drink that quart down, and then I'll dispose of that, somewhere in a recycle bin somewhere, or just tuck it in to this belt if I wanted to refill somewhere. So I know I have hydration over the course of a longer run. Granted, this was for this particular day. I can fit my phone in here, a couple of things like, Band-Aids, things of that nature. I actually went to the longer extent where for this purposes, I actually slipped on a little thing with like a little multi-tool in here. So if I had to do that, I could do that. I can't get it out now, but it's in there. And because these are the modern times, I actually, strapped on a little thing of pepper spray because you never know. Now, it might seem like overkill, but for me and my experiences, I thought that I could easily carry this. And as I said, it might seem a little heavy, but over the course of a whole day, you kind of forget that you're wearing it after a while. This might be for the longest day that you would go out, but it would certainly cover your needs on Long Island. Depending on the time of day, you also might want to consider, having a source of light. Everyone has a light on their smartphones, but you're all familiar with these things that you can wear on your head. It takes a few minutes to get used to them, but after that, you kind of forget you're wearing that. I also, by accident, I think I found this in Home Depot. This was just like a junky kind of hat like this that has a knit cap that has a little light built in, a little battery thing. And I'll wear that sometimes, even just for walking the dog. It's great. I'll just go out and it's a hands-free kind of thing. Depending on the conditions, how much light you have at different times of the year, you can kind of mix and match, what you might want to do. Okay, that's a little bit on the question of equipment. A couple of other things that I've also brought along: a whistle. Okay, you could find yourself lost or having to call for help. You might, you always have the chance something bad can happen to you. You could just fall down, get hurt, and might, be disoriented. Okay, there's a lot of different, this is more like, your bigger kind of whistle. This will hear you a long ways away. These little things you can get for like a couple of dollars at, at Dick's or some other sporting store. I would tuck it in your pocket. It weighs nothing. What I'm trying to emphasize is that the further away you get from civilization, the more you should consider about, your own safety and what you might need to do, including something like this, like, the little emergency blanket. I used to squirrel away like an extra one at the end of a marathon, and kind of take it and like fold it up and like keep it, and it would be all sweaty, but I would try to use it anyway. But now you can get these commercially, and obviously the weight, so it's like a tiny wallet. God forbid something happened to you, you fell down, got hurt, you were stuck out there. Okay, you tuck yourself into one of these, it could save you, from, serious exposure, and doesn't have to be far from home. Okay, it can happen anywhere. So with that, I would say that if you're not experienced with going out on the trail, you can start easy. Okay, first thing I would suggest is that you should go with a partner. Okay, don't consider it, a big excursion. Go to a local park, somewhere that has a trail of any kind. Okay, it could just be a trail filled with, mulch that's alongside, a picnic ground. Okay, somewhere where you can at least experiment with running on a surface that's not asphalt or concrete, and get a feel for it. And do it on a day where you're not locked into saying, I've got to do my time 10-mile run today. I got to do it this way. Do it on an off day or a day where you have some flexibility. So you can just say, you know what, just going to go out, going to just do something different, enjoy the day in nature. I'll do some running. If I'm tired, I don't feel comfortable, I'll walk. Which kind of leads into what I was thinking earlier, Hillary. All of these kind of seminars kind of like bleed over into one another. Some people might consider trail running getting out of their comfort zone, and it certainly could be. Okay. On the other hand, you could also treat the trail running as another example of the walk-run method. Okay, I do this frequently. Sometimes I'm out on a trail run and I'm just, moping along and doing really good. And then something just strikes me and I said, this is really nice. This is really pretty. And I'll just stop, and I'll just walk, I'll just take it in. And then I find that I'm really enjoying the experience, and then I catch my breath and I take off, and I start to run again. And it just makes the whole day ultimately a very positive experience. You come back, you feel refreshed, you're a little gritty, you're a little muddy, but you kind of felt like a kid playing in the playground. But you got to work out in, and you'll find that maybe there's something to this. It's another avenue to explore that you didn't do before. that being said, depending on where you live, if you're a little skittish about being out, go with a friend or go with a group. Explore your area, find out if there are other groups, explore the places where you can go. On Long Island, there are lots of places to go. I'm going to give you a few examples. Again, apologies to people who don't live locally, but I'm sure if you look around, you're going to find good places too. A great place, I think, to start on Long Island is down in Merrick, at Norman Levy Park. Okay, it's right off Merrick Road. I found this several years ago just by accident. For those who are familiar, basically they capped a landfill and turned it into a nature preserve. And I think they did a really good job with it. The trails that go around the park, really, it's kind of like a loop-de-loo with some rises as well to the top. Almost all of it is covered with crushed shells, oyster shells or clam shells. And it's a really nice surface to run on. It's got a little bit of everything. It's got some shade, it's got some sun, it's got some rises, it's got some flats. And at the top, you get really a bonus. You get a 360-degree view all the way out to the ocean, the other way out to Manhattan. It can be windy at the top, okay? But again, given the variety, if you flop back down, you can get a break from the wind from there. The beauty of that place is that you can't get lost. You won't be far from civilization. It's relatively popular place. And if you get stuck during season, you can even call an emergency number to come out with a golf cart and you can pick you up and drive you back to the parking lot area. So it's a really, really good place to start where you won't feel uncomfortable about being on the trail. After that, I would explore New York State parks. Okay, again, usually there are easy trails that start out right from the parking lot. You usually don't have to go too far from civilization if you're a little skittish about that. In Bethpage State Park, you have a great opportunity because parts of the Nassau Greenbelt Trail all parallel each other. There's a mountain bike trail that parallels the hiking trail that parallels paved running trails. So you can jump off of either of them very, without much difficulty whatsoever. And it's a relatively safe place to start out. After that, really, the world is your oyster. Okay, there's lots of places to go. And if you want to have some fun after that, consider entering a trail race. I've been in several. They can be a lot of fun. Some of them a little bit more endurance related. I'm not talking about signing up for an ultra marathon that takes you up Pikes Peak or anything like that. There's lots that you can do close to home. That's just a simple loop, a 5K, except that it's in the woods. Okay, and it's supported like every other race that you might enter. And again, you can have some fun. It's something a little bit different. It's not like an adventure race. It's just a race in the woods. On Long Island, there are several that you can look at. In November, in Syosset, there's a race called the Rob's Run. It's a 5K through Stillwell Woods Preserve. That's a very popular one. If you're in shape and you want to try something longer, in May, along the Greenbelt Trail, there's a Greater Long Island Running Club sponsors a 25K and a 50K race. That's a little bit more involved. You should try that out and be in shape to do that distance. And if you want to have something really kind of kooky, a couple of years ago I went to up to Westchester and I competed in the Leatherman's Loop. Right, it's not even sure how long it is. It's kind of like open-ended, kind of like hippy-dippy kind of experience. They run this thing up at Ward Pound Ridge. They change the course slightly every year. And basically you go You go marching across this beautiful, really beautiful experience. But you will jump over logs. You'll be asked to cross a stream. In the case of the year that I went, it was in April and it was really cold and the stream was like almost waist high. Okay, it wasn't far, but they had a rope across to kind of help people get across. It was maybe 15, 20 feet across. And then you were just covered, in cold and mud, and then you ran the rest of the race. It's doable really for most people, and and not terribly unsafe, shall we say. So that's it for my presentation. I just wanted to give you guys an introduction, maybe open up your mind to, doing something a little different, than your ordinary, day-to-day runs.
Steve, that was great. Thank you very much. It was really informative. I have a couple of questions. First,
Yes.
many of the people in the group, in the running side, they don't want to do trails because they're afraid that they're going to get hurt. What would you say to somebody like that?
Again, I would say, go to a park where you know that there's a trail, and go for a walk. See what it's like just on an afternoon, maybe after you've done your workout. Go visit a park. Go visit a place where you know that there's an existing trail, and just go for a walk. See what it's like. You're most likely going to encounter other people out there who are walking, and you very likely may see other people running. Get an idea of what the terrain is. A lot of the trails on Long Island may not be steep or filled with rocks or gravel, but they could be tricky because there are lots of roots, and an errant rock here and there. And I can't say that it's not without hazard. Okay, you can fall, but we fall all the time, tripping over curbs or potholes in the street. Most of the trails are not much different than that, but you do have to be attentive, which is why I always say, focus on safety. Okay, but to answer your question, I would say start out just by going for a walk, just spending a day, find a place, go see what's out there.
Yeah,
My second question is, you alluded to the fact that when you're trail running, you're going to go a lot slower than when you're road running. And does it make sense just to leave the watch home?
It can. It can. It certainly can. And I have done that. That leads to a whole different side of the equation. And I get where you're going with that. There are times when we absolutely can benefit from just disconnecting. And sometimes it's not intentional. Sometimes, because we have so much gear, we're preparing. Sometimes I've gone out the door and headed out for a run and realized I don't have a watch. And so those days I just say, who cares? Okay, I'm going to go. I kind of have an idea where I'm going. I have a pretty good idea of how far it's going to be. And sometimes I'll just go back and I'll write into my log somewhere. I'll say, did a run today, not sure how far. Just ran, I think about 40 minutes. So felt like a pace that I can manage. It was a good day. Oh, well, see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Sure.
hey, Steve, I agree with everything you've said, and I would really endorse trail running for everybody. I would also add that in terms of the trails, there are certainly many different grades of trails. So, this group, the local group, has been at Hempstead Lake State Park, which I would call like a novice trail. It's basically
Sure.
a dirt road, and that's a great way to start because, it's easy, it's wide, no trouble with ticks because unless you intentionally go off the path, you're not going to run into anything, and it's a great start. I would also add, and again for everybody here on Long Island, just going on the beaches would be a great trail run as well.
Correct.
And another one where you're never far, from if you want to stop, take a break, hit the local Dunkin' Donuts, whatever. You know, you could do that, you know, as a beginner, plus just running on the sand is yes, Bill, I'm talking to you. You know, plus running on the sand is terrific for your ankles, you know, as far as strengthening them. So,
Mhm.
when just one other question: when you did your Greenbelt Trail, was that the East-West Trail?
No, both of the Greenbelt trails on Long Island are north-south.
Okay.
The Long Island Trail, the Nassau Trail, which is the newer of the trail, runs from Cold Spring Harbor down south to the Massapequa Preserve.
Hmm.
I don't know the entire, I'm going to say it's in the range of 20 or so miles. Again, that's got a variety of terrain. On the south end in Massapequa, it's really flat and parallels the bike trail as well. It's pretty heavily used. You're never far from civilization. It's a good place to start as well because you can see the bike trail paralleling. You can see people walking on there. And if you get tired of, you know, walking on the trails, which are flat, by the way, you can just hop back over onto the paved section and just enjoy the rest of, you know, your run or walk. And I've done that as well. There have been days when I've gone out and I've been a little too enthusiastic. I wanted to stay on the trail and I just found it just to be too muddy, too icy, just too difficult to navigate. So I'll hop back off onto the paved section and just continue on to there. It's nice to have that flexibility on trails like that are multi-use trails, and they're becoming increasingly popular on Long Island. In Suffolk County is where the main Long Island Greenbelt Trail is, the original. And we can thank the Greenbelt Trail Conference, honestly, for being like the innovators for preserving open space and turning them into trails on Long Island. They started in the 70s as being advocates, and they did a great job with that. And now that has sprung up, you know, all kinds of different, you know, trails around Long Island. You know, it's become very popular, and we're all benefiting from that. But that trailhead goes, and that goes from Sunken Meadow Park all the way south to Heckscher Park in East Islip. And again, going north to south, you have, you know, really, you know, steep hills and climbs at the North Shore. And then it flattens out, you know, to really pancake flat and, you know, packed trail when you get down into Heckscher. I've led hikes there for the Greenbelt Trail. We call them Greenbelt or Bust. We used to do them frequently, and I've hiked them in both directions, and I learned my lesson. So I no longer go south to north, because after a day of hiking, when you have to encounter those hills at Sunken Meadow after being out for, you know, 8 or 9 hours, yeah, it's challenging. And for some people, you know, if you're being a considerate hike leader and considering, you know, all the abilities of the people that are in your group, you know, for some people it's a little too much. So on the occasions when I've done that, you know, it's always been north to south. We get the hills out of the way early, and you see some, depending on the time of year, you get beautiful sunsets over Sunken Meadow as you climb the bluffs, and you know, then you dive into the woods and you head down south. So those are the two main trails. And don't overlook the eastern end of Long Island. You know, there's so many great, you know, trail systems, you know, further out east. But again, you're getting to be a little bit more remote when you're out there. So again, consider your safety. I would encourage, I should have said this earlier on, but this is a really important one. Never go out on a trail by yourself without someone else knowing where you're going. Okay. Anything can happen. My wife yells at me frequently because I might change directions. I thought I was going to go to a certain trail, and then I changed my mind and went to a different park. And she said, so if I had to call the people to come and rescue you, I would have been looking for you, you know, on the trail over here, but you're not there. And that's critically important, especially if you're going by yourself. If you're going with someone else, still have someone else out there who knows where you're going, God forbid something happens, you fall, you hit your head, you're unconscious. It happens, and it can happen here close to home. Someone should know where you are. Okay?
Thank you, Steve. So does anybody have any other questions before we wrap this up?
I got a couple things about shoes. Bill, you showed two different pairs of shoes, the higher top one and the low top one that you like to use for racing, but it looked like both of them had a really good solid toe cap. So if you accidentally stub your shoe on a rock or a root, that would provide good protection. Is that, is that something that you've dealt with and you decided you wanted to make sure you had shoes that had good coverage on the toe?
It's worth considering depending on the terrain you're likely to go on. If you're in trails that are very rocky, then yes, certainly, because you're definitely likely to stub your toe. You should look at your surroundings, okay? But for starting out, you don't need much else, especially if you're just going a couple of miles on an easy trail. You can use your regular running shoes, you'll be fine. But as you move up, sure, depending on the circumstances, consider what your needs are going to be.
Okay. And then another thing, I don't own any of these, but somebody provided them at a race I did one time, and it wasn't a really long distance, but apparently these woods were full of some really nasty flies. And they had this double-sided tape. It was like these little patches that you would put on the back of your hat. And the flies would fly into it and they would stick to it. And it was really handy because, if you're running on a trail and you get that one fly that seems to keep buzzing your ear and you can't, So I don't know if you've ever used it or you recommend it.
I'm not familiar
probably
with that.
Okay. I don't know, some kind of fly tape, deer fly tape or whatever they call it. People said you could just buy it on Amazon. I haven't bought any yet, but like I said, it was provided at a race that I did. And I was like, oh, I'm going to try this stuff. And it was kind of handy. But I know flies in Michigan can be really annoying, especially if you're on a trail and it's, well covered and the flies are like, hey, people, they can be really annoying. And then one other thing, and this question popped up in the chat. Somebody asked about using a Camelback. I guess that's probably a personal thing, but I did buy one of those last year and I used it in a trail run. It was a marathon though. So I thought, well, if I'm going to be out there that long, I wanted to carry more hydration. And it had like little pockets on the side where you could put, like you were talking about carrying your extra water bottle, you could put it in the sides, which I was like, that's pretty handy.
Yes.
I don't know if you had any comments about using a Camelback.
Yes, I should have mentioned that earlier. That then again, that goes to a higher level of equipment. I have used those in the past. I have not mastered or found one that really works particularly well for me. I'm still experimenting with that, but I am considering getting a Camelback style vest. The ones I used in the past, I found to be a little uncomfortable. I found that I was sweating a lot, especially on my back. I found it hard to breathe. Another one that I had that I had originally used for mountain biking was the one that kind of has that little tube with the little mouth bite thingy, and I didn't care for that at all. It was just flopping around all the time, and I'm going to experiment with the ones that you've probably seen that have the vest. It's very lightweight, has a breathable back, but has room in front for water bottles that you can wear along each side here.
Okay.
So I'm going to look into that for longer runs, particularly in the summer where you really need to hydrate more. But beyond that, I've had mixed results with the ones I've tried so far. But the good thing about the sports that we're involved in is that the innovation never stops. Hillary, you can speak to this. Okay, it never ends. The companies are certainly motivated by profit, which is fine. That's great. That's capitalism. But with regard to our sports, I think the people who are developing these things, they really have our interests in mind because they're also users to begin with.
Yeah, they are.
So they're developing products that are always trying to just like tweak things a little better, make things a little bit better for people, a little bit more comfortable. it never ends. There's no shortage of examples. Wetsuits, Hillary, you send new things about wetsuits periodically. Yeah, I never thought, you could find anything new or better, but yet they keep coming up with something new. So, that's a good thing about the sports that we're interested in. And with some exceptions, you find that most of the things are within striking range of most people's budgets. You don't have to buy the most expensive. They're usually, increments of things that will serve most people's needs. So yeah, I would say always just experiment. You can't go wrong.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Anybody else before we wrap this up?
Okay.
Okay, I had one more.
Oh, go for it. Go ahead, go for it.
Do you wear those gator things over the tops of your shoes so you don't get like rocks and pebbles in your shoes when you're running on the trail?
I have not. I haven't been on trail systems that really required that. As I said,
Okay.
most of my trail running has been here at home on Long Island at the top of the food chain. But if you're in an area where you encounter conditions like that, it can't hurt. Okay, you can use them even for walking, even in snow and winter. A variation of the same gaiter provides you a little bit of relief from snow getting into your shoes. They're not a bad thing. As I said, there's no shortage. If you go to well, I don't have to promote any particular manufacturer or store, but again, one of the upsides of the internet is that you can find almost anything with a couple of clicks, and it gives you some ideas to experiment with. So yeah, but in closing, my suggestion to everyone would just be to get out and try it. Okay, find a park, it's got a trail, go for a walk. If you feel comfortable while you're walking, you want to jog a little bit, jog a little bit. If you feel better about that, try and run, see where it takes you. Give yourself a little time to adapt to it. Accept the fact that you're not going to run at your 5K pace that you would, on a street. Okay, that's not what you're there for. Okay, you're there to just mix it up, get a little variety into your training, enjoy a day, looking at nature. And I have to emphasize this before we go. I discourage anyone from wearing headphones or earphones, anything like that when you're out on trails. I know some people would never run a step if they couldn't listen to music to distract them from the drone of running. And if that gets you to run at all, then good for you, if that keeps you going. But I would really suggest, for safety's sake, don't do it when you're out on trails, even if you're with someone. But also for enjoyment's sake, okay? I think you're missing out on an important sense that is really part of the whole issue about being out on the trails, that you're missing out on the sounds. Okay, you don't have to be a bird lover to appreciate that there are creatures out here making noises, and you get to enjoy the whole experience. Okay, so I should have said that earlier, but that's an important thing. Okay, don't wear headphones when you're out on the trail.
Steve, this was great, really great. And I don't know whose that is, but but anyway, I just want to say that this was great and inspiring, and I'd like to go out on the trail. So maybe next week we'll
plan something. We'll plan an outing. We'll get the group out there.
That'll be awesome. That'd be really fun. All right. Well, thank you very much. And thank you all for joining. There's a couple of comments, Steve, in the chat, if you want to check them out.
Okay.
And yeah, have a great day, Will.
I'll send back, I'll send responses to you guys. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.